I just wanted to start out before Carol Rizzi comes to the podium, and just again, I agree with Mr. Meyer. Thank everyone for coming. This commission has worked really hard for the last 5+ years, and mostly in an empty room, going over every section of this ordinance. It's been a lot of work, and again, I just wanted to thank my staff too. Tonight is Will Hurt's first night here, and he's being trained by Kathy, and she's been an incredible help through this process. And Sean and Chip on my staff have been really good to help us answer questions. We've been talking to people all week, and it's been really good to hear what the public has to say. So with that, I'm going to let Carol Rizzio, she's had the patience of a saint for the last 5 years heading up this project, and she's going to kind of go over some of the bigger things in the ordinance. Again, it's 6 years worth of work, a lot of pages, so she's going to just try to hit the highlights. So thanks, Carol.
Okay, good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, and members of the public. As Ann said, this was a very long process. There is no way I can identify all the changes, but we will go over some of the ones that we believe the public is more interested in. So I'm going to break up my presentation into these 5 topics. First, I'm going to talk about the hot topics, the one that we've heard about a lot on social media, so everybody can be clear on what exactly is being proposed with the ordinance change. Then I'm going to go over the goals of the update, why we went on this endeavor, and there are several. I'm going to go do an overview of the outreach activities we've had to date. As Ann said, we've done a lot and not got a lot of public input, so this is great. We're glad you're here. And then I'm going to summarize the other key changes that maybe weren't hot topics, but are key changes we want everybody to be aware of so that you can provide your comments. As has been said, a decision is not being made tonight. This is for public input. And then finally, the next steps, talk about what happens after tonight. Okay, so we sent a letter to everybody in the county with your individual parcel information on it. That does not mean the zoning district is changing. It is not. And zoning districts aren't related to flood zones or evacuation zones. Zoning generally dictates the minimum lot sizes, setbacks, and what uses are and are not permitted on the district. The map up there is our current zoning map. All parcels will remain zoned exactly the same except for one, and we identified this through public questions over the last couple weeks. There is a parcel zoned RMX. There is only one parcel in the county zoned RMX. Because we are proposing to combine RMX and B2, it would be zoned B2. I will point that parcel out a little later in the presentation, but every other parcel in the county, whatever it's currently zoned, is remaining that way. Hot topic has been discussed as farming uses in SC1 and C2. So initially I want to start off, we do have 2 agriculture districts in the county, and they're identified on that map. The white color is our RC1, Rural Countryside Agriculture District, and the blue parcels on the east side of the county are Rural Conservation RC2. Farming is permitted by right. It's protected by the Right to Farm Act. We also have 2 districts, our SC1, Suburban Countryside, and our C2, districts that are rural residential districts. Farming does occur in these districts currently, historically, has always, can continue to do so. The current ordinance does not permit farming for new uses. So if somebody has property in SC1 that is currently not being farmed, and they want to do a farm, and they come into the zoning office and ask for a permit, we have to say no, because agriculture is not currently permitted in SC1. It also is not currently permitted in C2, our other rural residential district. The proposal is to allow it by special exception. So again, right to farm protects our agriculture districts. Agriculture has a lot of different uses, livestock markets, chemicals. So residential districts don't have those protections, but the agriculture district does. When zoning was established in 98, I believe, or 1984 established, they zoned out agriculture from our rules at residential districts. The proposal is to allow it by a special exception process. So we're kind of trying to give some agriculture rights back to people who are in the SC1 and C2 district. But again, it's only for new. If you're historically doing it, if you're farming these areas now, you can continue to do so. And agriculture doesn't, it's a commercial operation. It's not a home garden or anything like that. It's a commercial farming operation. So currently in the SC1 and C2 district, you can do aquaculture by SE. And to explain, a special exception is a permit process that has one public hearing. It's $275 fee, one public hearing with the BZA. Just so everybody's aware of, and I'll go over that again in a future slide. So you can come in and ask for permission to do aquaculture in SC1 and C2, and you can ask for permission to do agritourism. However, agriculture, you currently cannot ask for permission to do, and farm, winery, brewery, or distilleries, you cannot ask for permission to do. So this ordinance is giving that ability for somebody to ask. We don't have to say no. We can say, well, maybe if you apply for this, the adjacent property owners are notified, and it goes before the BZA. So this is a use table that kind of shows you all the agriculture type uses and the districts across the top and how they're permitted. So bold and underlined is a change. So currently ag is not permitted in these districts. We're proposing to allow it. And farm, winery, brewery, and distilleries are not currently permitted, and we're proposed to allow it.
Can you go over the abbreviations just one time for the audience?
Yes, thank you for that question. So P is permitted by right. It's an administrative review. You come in for a zoning permit and you're allowed to do it by right. Special exception is that $275 fee, one public hearing with the BZA. And CUP is a conditional use permit. It requires a $1,000 fee and two public hearings, one with the Planning Commission and one with the board. That is what the rezoning for the gas station went through at CUP. No, rezoning, actually, rezoning. Sorry, forget that. Rezoning.
Thank you for that.
So you've underlined the new stuff, SC.
Yes,
So right now, it's not allowed at all.
correct.
And so now it's allowed with a special exception in C2 and SC1 for agriculture operation.
Correct.
Right now, it's not allowed at all. So you're being more permissive.
Correct.
All right, thanks.
Another hot topic was fees. This is a schedule of fees. No current fees are changing. There is a proposal to add a fee for a zoning verification letter. Zoning verification letters are typically requested by banks for financial purposes. They want to make sure that what they're financing is legal per the zoning ordinance. So they ask for verification letters. The fee we're proposing is $100 for a zoning verification letter. Half of the other localities we inventory do charge for that, and $100 is in the realm of where it is. So another hot topic was camping. So the way a lot of what we went through was looking at all the definitions for the uses that are permitted in the county. Are they clear? Do they make sense? The way the definition is currently written for campground, it includes not only commercial campgrounds, but putting up a RV or a tent on a vacant piece of property you may own. And the struck out SC right here. So currently campground is permitted in these districts, so our 2 ag and our 2 rural residential districts by special exception. So if somebody wants to camp on their property, they have to come in for a special exception. As we were going through this, that didn't make sense to the board or the Planning Commission. So the proposal is to separate personal camping on your own property from a commercial campground. So this first line, campground, covers those commercial campgrounds. The second one is camping for your personal use and enjoyment. It is limited to no more than 1 week at a time or 30 days in a month, but is proposed to be permitted by right. 30 days in a year, thank you. 1 week no longer than 1 week at a time or 30 days in any year.
What is the difference between an SC and a CUP?
So SE is that $275 fee, one public hearing with the BZA, who is appointed, not elected. The CUP is a $1,000 fee and 2 public hearings, one with the Planning Commission and one with the Board of Supervisors. We realize that it's probably not clear. No permit will be required for you to camp on your property under personal use and enjoyment. So you won't have to pay that $35 fee for a zoning permit, and we will make that clear in the ordinance. So there were some questions about that, and that was not our intent. So those were the hot topics we heard. Maybe some of the other changes will address some other ones we didn't hear. But so I'll just go into the goals of the zoning ordinance update. Why are we going on this endeavor? One of the main goals is revisions for clarity and ease. Zoning ordinances are difficult, especially if you don't deal with zoning on a daily basis. The current ordinance is not very user-friendly, not only for the public, but for staff. There's a table that I show on the next slide that is very difficult to determine what uses are permitted and what the different regulations are. So a big part of this is reformatting the ordinance and making it clearer and more straightforward. Another one is modernizing the ordinance, removing unnecessary regulations. One of our uses is for a cabinet fabricator, and it's only permitted in I-1. Well, that doesn't really make sense. That was a use that was around for a while. There's portable sawmills. So looking at all of them and bringing it into current day, does this make sense in the districts that's permitted? And is this even a use that we need to regulate? Another one, modernize, conform to state code. State code is always changing, so it's bringing our ordinance up to current with state code. And then clarify intent and interpretation. Words matter in laws. And the zoning ordinance is a law. We have to enforce what is on the books. So we want to make sure it's clear and understandable. So that was part of the intent too. So this is the current table that is the district regulations, official schedule of district regulations. Along the left side are all the uses that are permitted in the district. If it's a special exception, it's over here. And they're not in alphabetical order because as we added uses, they just added at the bottom. Individual uses have their own lot size requirements. Some of them don't make sense, like why does that use require a certain lot size? So we got rid of the ones that didn't make sense. And then in the table on this right-hand column, there is this miscellaneous, that's kind of all these other regulations that apply. It gets shoved into this column and it's very, very hard to, it gets missed a lot, it's very hard to decipher. So changing this whole format to where if anybody has had the opportunity to look at the new ordinance, in Article 5, every district is listed with all the regulations you need to know for that individual district. And then there's also a table that is just a use table to where if you have a use and you want to know where it's permitted, you can look at that use table and see which districts it's permitted in. Other than doing that, you have to kind of scroll through tables and tables and tables to see where the use is permitted. Another purpose of the zoning ordinance update is to implement the comp plan. The comp plan is a vision for the county. You heard John kind of talk about that when we were evaluating the previous rezoning. You know, what is the future land uses proposed to be in the county? So we want to bring the zoning ordinance in alignment with the future land use. So the comp plan, implement the vision of the comp plan, and these are these overarching visions that are in the comp plan that we hope our zoning ordinance changes support and promote. Preserving our rural character, supporting healthy neighborhoods, encouraging economic development, and promoting a thriving historic core. It also was to implement the board's 3-year strategic plan from 2018. As I said, this project started in 2017, I believe. It's been many years we've been working on it. So they have similar goals to our comp plan: preserve rural atmosphere, spur a thriving economy, and encourage a mix of uses in housing, and remove unnecessary regulations. And as I said, we did a lot of public engagement, although we did not get we did not get this at any of them, I don't think. We put multiple articles in the Beehive throughout the process. We did have a public input survey on that just closed a couple months ago. We did get, I think, over 18,000 answers, but just over 700 people did respond to that survey online. We inserted a flyer in everybody's most recent tax bill, although people they miss it. You know, you see the bill and throw out the flyer. And we did 2 podcasts at least on it, trying to get information. And at the end of 2022 in November, we did have 3 public open houses in the northern, central, and southern part of the county, where we went out and kind of did a presentation of the major changes. We had district regulations where people could see and comment on. So we've tried to get engagement. So those are the goals. All right, so now key changes other than those that I went over before. So district regulations are located in Article 5 of the zoning ordinance. This graphic on the right, which I know is hard to read, there is one on our website that I do need to update a little bit. This identifies those key changes in the districts. And I know even staff and people, like, it's hard to understand. So we understand that it's hard for you guys to understand what is happening and what all this means. So we encourage you to continue to call us. And we've had our phone ringing off the hook for the last couple weeks. And we are happy to talk to people and encourage you guys to call and ask any questions. And we can direct you to the part where your district is or those districts that you're interested in so you can see specifically what the regulations are. But district regulations typically are minimum lot size, max building heights, and setbacks. And none of that changed in any residential district. The regulations that are currently for lot sizes, heights, and setbacks are the same in all residential districts as in the proposed ordinance. So to learn more, you can find out what district you are in, look at Article 5, and see what regulations and uses are permitted in your district. There is one change to the Village Mixed Use District, which is our B2 district, and it's hard to see, but it's around our courthouse area, and then there's some blobs of it down along in the Point Hayes area. This is a village mixed use, but currently you can only do a residential dwelling associated with a commercial business, so you can only do one. The proposal is to allow attached single-family dwellings, so townhomes and multifamily, by right in this district. The proposal by right is up to 8 dwelling units an acre, and up to 12 if you come in and get approval for a conditional use permit. And again, that conditional use permit, $1,000, 2 public hearings. And that parcel that I said actually is going to change zones is down here in the Point area. It is the only RMX piece of property we have in the county. The old movie theater, or I think somebody said it closed, I'm not sure. The movie is open. The movie theater is here, so it's just south of the movie theater. It was cleared many years ago for this development. They do have a site plan approval for residential on that parcel that's good till 2025. If this passes and it turns to B2 and they don't move forward with that and their site plan approval doesn't get extended by the state past 2025, they would then have to conform to B2 district. Okay, uses. So as I said before, we went through all the uses. We went through the definitions of the uses and how they're permitted in each district. And we look, should this be permitted by right? Should it be by special exception or by CUP? A special exception, we let those uses that are special exceptions are the less intensive ones, the ones that we don't think are going to impact the community as a whole. They may have some impacts on adjacent neighborhood, but not as a whole. So you think campgrounds. A commercial campground is a pretty big use. You probably want your elected officials making the decision on that. But whether somebody has a home occupation type 2, which we'll talk about, is a special exception. So the less intense uses typically are special exception permits, and the CUPs are the bigger use impacts. So to learn more, you can identify the uses that interest you, see where they're permitted. In section 5-70 of the ordinance is that use table that has all the districts listed and all the uses and how they're permitted. Or you can just look at your district and see what is and is not permitted in your district and how it's permitted. Then Article 9, we have all our supplemental regs. And supplemental regs are just other regulations in a district in addition to the district regulations. For example, 9C is our screening and buffering. So anytime a commercial business is developed adjacent to a residential lot, they have to screen from that residential property line. So 9C, you'll see all the information about the regulations related to that. 9B is uses with additional regulations. So think like solar farms. We have a whole pages of additional regulations related specifically to solar farms. Firing ranges have additional regulations related to them. So you not only have to see what district the use is permitted in, but then you have to look at those additional regs to see what other things you have to meet in order to be able to do that use. Home occupations. So currently, well, first I'll define a home occupation. It's an accessory use of a residential property, which is the business owner's bona fide residence. They don't have to own the property they're living in, they just have to live in the property and own the business that they want to start at the property. There are two types currently, and they're proposed to be two types. Type 1 is permitted by right. It would have that P in our use table, meaning that they just come in for a zoning permit to do so and then a business license. So it's permitted administratively. Type 2 home occupations are permitted by special exception, so that SE, the one public hearing with the BZA and the $275 fee. The proposed regulations allow more flexibility for outdoor storage and operations and commercial vehicles. So top part is type 1, the last column or last row is type 2. So currently, and I'll talk about currently what's permitted and then what the proposed changes are. So for type 1, that one that is permitted administratively, doesn't go before any public hearing or board, currently you cannot do any outside storage or operations, and you can only have one commercial vehicle, and it cannot be a large vehicle such as a dump truck or a tractor trailer. The proposal is to allow in our larger lots, so 5 acres or greater, in our ag districts, RC1 and RC2, and in our rural residential districts, C2 and SC1, to allow by right up to a ½ acre of outside storage and operations, provided it is screened from the adjacent property lines.
Define screened.
Not visible.
Okay,
So fencing or landscaping, plantings, that such. For commercial vehicles, as I said, currently just one commercial vehicle, and it can't be a dump truck or a tractor trailer. Proposal is to allow up to 2 commercial vehicles, and one of which can be a dump truck or a tractor trailer, but the lot that the home occupation is on has to be a ½ acre or greater. So you wouldn't be permitted to do that on under a ½ acre by right, but you could if you had more than a ½ acre or more. And then our type 2, which requires that special exception in front of our BZA, currently we only allow people to come in and ask for permission to have customers or employee traffic to their home-based business. The proposal is to allow people to come in and ask for permissions on a wide variety of things: customer and employee traffic, outside storage or operations, if they can't meet the restrictions for 5 acres or more, or if they're a smaller lot but they still want outside storage and operations, if they need more than 2 commercial vehicles, or if it entails, like type 1 shouldn't have any noise, smoke, offensive odors, etc. So let's say they have a business that maybe creates some noise. They would be able to, it would be a type 2, and it would come in to the BZA for a special exception possibility to be permitted. So it lessens, it gives more opportunities for people to do home-based businesses. And if you're interested to learn more, all this is detailed in section 9B-970, home occupations. So we have a use, livestock, personal use, and enjoyment. Currently, that use has acreage requirements per animal and per type of animal. And those acreage requirements can't include any structure or the yard for any structure. And it's very difficult to determine if it's very time consuming, not only for staff, but for the applicant. So the idea here is to go away from animal care and making sure that every animal has enough land and leave that to the people who own the animals, trust that they're going to take care of them, and if they're not, then animal welfare and control can come in and help. But to just have a minimum acreage required to have animals. So the minimum acreage is 2 acres. It lines up with our current regulations, and then additional animals are based on additional acres. So you have to have 2 acres to have animals. You can have more if you have more acres. And with the exception of chickens, there's no limit on in our rural residential districts. In SF1, there is a limit, which is our single family district. It's single family is smaller lots, a lot of it down at the Point Hayes area. So again, to learn more about these regulations and the changes, you can look at 9B-340. Stables, commercial. So this is an example of the definition and how we tried to make it clearer and more inclusive. So the bold and underline are additions. So currently, a stable is defined as a building or land where horses are kept for, I'm not going to be able to say the word, so I won't even try, hire, sale, boarding, riding, or show. We're adding the horses can be standard or miniature, can have ponies, donkeys, mules, and the like. Currently, it's required to have 1.5 acres per horse for a commercial stable. And the proposal is to just say, if you have 2 acres minimum, you can have a commercial stable. The one change that came out of one of the joint meetings was that in SC1, instead of it being permitted by right administratively, 2 acres, sure, you can have a commercial stable, it's proposed to be a special exception, which is that public hearing before the BZA. To learn more of that, changes to that section, you can look at 9B-350. Freight containers. We get a lot of complaints about freight containers, and I think the Planning Commission talked about this topic for about 6 months. It was in our public survey question about freight containers, and the public was pretty even, where the Planning Commission was like, some people like them, some people don't. It's kind of 50-50. So after 6 months of talking, this is where we landed. So again, the current regs are first, and then the proposed regs. So, and this is freight containers for storage. This is not freight containers if you want to build a home or a shed out of it. That, as long as you meet building code, we don't dictate building materials for homes, storage sheds. However, this is only concerning freight containers used for storage. Like if you don't want to put a garage up, you want to put a freight container and store stuff in it. So in our ag, industrial, and commercial, they are permitted accessory use, and there is no limitations on the number. That is staying the same. In our village mixed use district, which is our B2 district, again, think of the courthouse area, think of the Point Hayes area. They're currently permitted, and there's no limitations. The proposal is to not permit them in B2. In our residential areas, they are currently permitted and limited to the number you can have. So if you have less than 2 acres, you can have 1. If you have 2 to 5 acres, you can have 2. And if you have greater than 5 acres, you can have 5. The proposal is to, in our residential districts, to not permit them in SF1, which is our, again, most urban, small lot size, single family district, multifamily district, and on lots less than 2 acres. And it's permitted in other residential districts, so SC1, C2, on lots between 2 and 5 acres, 1 is permitted, or proposed to be permitted, and on lots greater than 5 acres, a maximum of 3 are proposed to be permitted. And to learn more about this section, you can go to 9D-20. Common open space requirements. Most people like this one. So common open space is open space within a development or subdivision that is not part of individually owned lots, and which is available for the use and enjoyment of the residents. There is currently no requirement for open space in development. Some developers do it, I think most of them do, but there's no requirement from the county to do it. Some don't do as much as maybe what you would like. So the proposal is to require it. So for single family developments that are greater than 50 lots, so new subdivisions, this doesn't apply to anything existing, this is just new things that come in. New subdivisions, the smaller lots, so less than 10,000 square foot lots, would require 10% open space. 10 to 30,000 square foot lots, 7.5% open space. Greater than 30,000 to 2 acres, 5% open space. And then if you're doing a subdivision that has 2+ acre lots, you don't have to do open space because there's enough open space on the parcels. And then for townhomes and multifamily developments, if they do more than 35 units, they have to do 10% of the net acreage in open space. And there's the reference sections for whichever, and it's pretty similar, but it's just multifamily, townhomes, and single are in different sections of the ordinance. So you can review those sections for more information in the specific language. And then so adjacent property owner notification. So I don't know, some of you may know, whenever somebody comes in and applies for a rezoning, a CUP, or a special exception, we have to notify adjacent property owners to that proposed development. There are a lot of private roads in the county. We get calls all the time, can the county take over my road because it's not being maintained? VDOT gets calls asking VDOT to take over the road, and the way the system works is the road has to be brought up to state standards before the state will take it over. The county doesn't have that kind of money, nor do the citizens that live along that road. So the idea is if somebody is proposing a development along a private road, it might be good to not only get information or input from the adjacent property owners, but from everybody that lives along that private road and has rights to use that road. So we're proposing in the ordinance expanded adjacent property owner notifications. For example, this is a private road in the county. If somebody were to propose something, a rezoning or something that would require a special exception or CUP on this parcel at the end of the lane, currently only these two people would be notified of the rezoning. If this is adopted as written, everybody along this private road would be notified of that potential project so that they could comment and provide input. And to learn more, you can look at, this would be in the application or how we notify. So it's in rezonings is 14-2, number 6, and you can, I won't read them because you don't need them right now, but this presentation will of course be online to go back and refer to these sections. So another change to our highway corridor development district. And I probably need to. So highway corridor, let me go to that slide. Oh, thank you. So Article 6A is our highway corridor development district. Its boundaries are 150 feet on both sides of the right-of-way along Route 17 within the development district, which is this darker outline. That's our development district. And commercial and industrial zoning that is outside of the development district. So along 17, if there's commercial or industrial zoning along this way, HCDD applies. The intent of the district is to ensure the continued viability of Gloucester's primary corridor. It has access management, limited architectural, and sidewalk requirements. However, those sidewalk requirements are only in our village areas. So here's the courthouse village, and here's the Point Hayes village area. Those are the only areas along 17 that require sidewalks. You all heard just recently about the rezoning that was proposed just south of our courthouse village area. And this is a map showing, all the red is current B1 or general business zone properties. The orange is the SC1 zone properties. This is multifamily, so that's the Riverbend. And then there's Cannon, the industrial park, business along the front of Cannon. So current requirement for sidewalks in our courthouse area along 17 and all street frontages for development within Highway Corridor Development District and at Fleming Riley Lane, which is right here. Staff recommended extending it down to TC Walker so that as development occurs along here, the developer is responsible for installing those sidewalks. Commercial growth is coming. We hear from people we're rural, we don't need sidewalks, and then we hear from people that live in the more urban areas that want sidewalks. So it's hard to say. This area is growing. I think staff would rather put the onus on the developer to install the sidewalks rather than having to go back and retrofit. We are proposing and applying for transportation funding to install sidewalks in our village areas now, and it is not cheap. It is not cheap. Let's see. So to learn more about this, you can look at Article 6A, which is our Highway Corridor Development District. And this is something that the Board and Planning Commission specifically asked your input on. They were not sure which way to go on this, so if you have thoughts about sidewalks and having the developer do it or us do it later or just forget sidewalks, I know they would be happy to hear that input. So temporary uses. So all these uses, food trucks, portable vending, portable toilets, and short-term rentals were discussed. Do we want to regulate them? Do we not? The decision ultimately was to not regulate them. Food trucks, they're kind of regulated in other parts, other ordinances or the state. So food trucks per zoning, as long as they don't, the same food truck doesn't stop at the same location on a regular basis, they're not establishing a use. They have to get a peddler's license and they can move around the county. Portable toilets, the health department has regulations where if you're building a house or something where people habitate, you cannot use porta potties to provide their sanitary needs. Short-term rentals was discussed a lot. The decision was to not regulate them now. That may change in the future, but for right now, it was to not regulate them. They're regulated, it's a single-family home. And if somebody decides to use their home for a short-term rental, the county has no zoning regulations related to that. So that Articles 1 through 9 make up the bulk of what's permitted, how it's permitted, and where it's permitted. Articles 10 through 15 are more administrative articles. Article 10 is nonconformity. So there are a lot of lots that don't meet the minimum lot size of the district, so that's basically a nonconforming lot. So if you have a nonconforming lot, you may not be able to meet your setbacks, so you get reduced setbacks. And then Article 11 covers parking, and Article 12 covers signs. Very minimal changes were made. Anything that was, we reduced the regulations. Like in parking, we're no longer including, in signs, we're no longer including drive-through order boards in our sign ordinance. Taking that out, we don't care. So I think I have a strike through. If anybody's interested, you could look at what changed, but again, very minimal. And our parking and sign is something that the Board and Planning Commission have wanted to look at those ordinances in detail and update them. We didn't want to take the time to do it with this update because, as I said, we've been working on it for so long. We're ready to kind of pass what we can and move on.
Carol, under nonconformities, so let's say hypothetically that the amendments would outlaw something, but currently it's allowed. So individuals who are using property allowable under the current ordinance would be able to continue to utilize it for that purpose.
Correct.
Notwithstanding that the new regulations would have otherwise permitted it. That's what nonconformity means. So it doesn't mean that if you change the regs that tomorrow you won't be able to do what you're doing today legally. Correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. Our Article 13 just goes over the administrative bodies, so the Planning Commission, the BZA, what their roles is, what their duties are. No real changes, just revised for clarity, processes, and to align with state code. Articles 14 and 15 are the administrative procedures, so that's the process for rezoning, the process for a special exception or a CUP. So we mainly added procedures for clarity. So people knew if you're applying for a rezoning, all you have to do is read the rezoning section and you'll see, okay, what is the process? What do I need to submit? What does the application require? And what's the process from here? What happens? 15 is enforcement, so it talks all about zoning permits. Again, very limited changes to this. In Article 14, I do have one addition that the Board and Planning Commission also wanted the public's input on, and I'm almost done, for those of you who are getting tired. So Article 14, you heard a lot about when Sean did the rezoning about the traffic impact analysis. So a TIA is a study that projects, evaluates, and identifies ways to mitigate the impact of traffic generated by our proposed development. So that's what they did. They did a traffic impact analysis, said they had to do a right turn lane into their development. The county has no requirements for TIAs. We rely on the state's requirements. The state currently, it's only applicable to rezonings. So it's not applicable to special exceptions or CUPs, just rezonings. And their threshold for non-residential uses is 5,000 average daily trips. So if a use produces 5,000 or more average daily trips, it triggers a traffic impact analysis. And there's a transportation engineers, IT Institute. Institute of Traffic Engineers produces this big book that talks about all the traffic that is generated from various uses based on square footage, based on number of seats in a restaurant, to help people identify what kind of impact it is. So on the right, you'll see the examples. So 5,000 average trips, a discount retail store of 70,000 plus square feet would likely trigger 5,000 trips. A discount retail with grocery of 86,000. A restaurant with 805 plus seats. A convenience store with 5,750 square feet. Or a hotel with 600 rooms. And then for residential, they have, it's a little lower threshold, but it's also based on the adjacent traffic on the road that is impacted. So it's 400 plus average daily trips only when it exceeds the current daily traffic on the impacted roadway. So if the impacted roadway has 2,000 average daily trips and you have 400 in your proposed development, it wouldn't trigger it. So the county is proposing, or staff is proposing, and the board and PC are evaluating, reducing that threshold for rezonings, CUPs, and special exceptions. So anytime somebody has to ask the county for permission to do something, and if they trigger the threshold that we're proposed, and I'm sorry this is darker and it's hard to see, 2,500 average daily trips. So we're proposing to cut in half the state's requirements, or 250 peak hour trips. And examples of what that might be is discount retail, and I can't even read my thing, 32,000. A restaurant with 204 seats, I think the 284 seats. I do. I lost them. Yes, thank you. And then for residential, we're going with that same 2,500 average daily trips or 250 peak hour trips. So that would be a 245 plus single family lot subdivision or 373 plus multifamily development. So it's bigger developments that may happen in the county. We're trying to stay away from the small mom and pop, smaller scale establishments. But we know development, especially larger developments, impact traffic. It would be great to have information on what kind of impacts there are and to force the developer to take care of those impacts that they create. So to learn more, you can look at these sections in the ordinance. So that is not all the changes, but the bigger ones that we thought you might be interested in that have maybe more of an impact. So now the Planning Commission is going to take public comment. They can't respond to questions, as you've kind of realized as we go through. We will have all the comments, staff will respond. Maybe we'll add to our frequently asked questions section on our website. We can talk to you after the meeting to respond to any questions you may have. So either tonight or at a future meeting, the PC will make a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors about the ordinance. Then the Board of Supervisors will hold their own public hearing on the ordinance. There's no date been determined, and there will be opportunities similar to tonight to where you can provide those comments. However, you will not get another letter, no other letter. So if you want to stay informed on what's happening, you can sign up on the website for the Planning Commission's meetings minutes and get informed when things are coming to the Planning Commission. You can also sign up for the board's packets to get an idea of what's happening. I think they just forward an email to you when things are, about what their topics are. Yeah.
They can also follow manually on the Gloucester County website, correct?
Correct. Yeah, everything's posted on the website. So after the board's public hearing, the board will either vote to approve the ordinance as drafted, to approve the zoning ordinance with changes, or to send it back to the Planning Commission for revisions. And again, we would love to talk to you, help you understand what the changes are proposed and how they're going to affect you, and get your input.